Hello and welcome to my review of the Third Doctor Adventures. Now, if you've known me for a long time, you'll know I've been anticipating this release for quite some time. So, for obvious reasons, because it's the Third Doctor, and the Third Doctor is my favourite Doctor. So, of course, it's exciting, and it's the Third Doctor on Big Finish. What could possibly go wrong? So in this review, you'll be finding out my thoughts on these two stories, The Prisoners of the Lake and Havoc Empire. So, without further ado, let's look how this audio is presented. Then we'll go into my thoughts on the two stories themselves. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Okay, so for the cover art we have Mike Yates there, the TARDIS there, and the space station what features in Havoc Empire. Then we have Joe Grant. Then we have the Third Doctor with an explosion behind him because he's back with a bang. Then we've got sort of a stony sort of structure there below. And then we have Doctor Who, Tim Taylor, Katie Manning, Richard Franklin in the Third Doctor Adventures. Now this is a bit of the cover which I don't like personally, because I feel like they should have used this sort of icon there. But no, they decided to use the same cover on the front, so it just looks a bit weird. Of course, I've got it signed by Jamie Robertson. Then we have other cast members, and we have the two stories there, Big Finish. On the spine, we have the Third Doctor icon there, the Third Doctor Adventures #1, so hopefully they will be doing another box set. Obviously Katie Manning was trying to tease them if they were doing another one. Then we have the bio on both stories, so do feel free to pause to know more about the stories individually. And it is 5 discs, and the total running time is 300 minutes. So now let's look inside. Okay, looking inside the box set, we have the reversible cover there, so if you want to change the logo. Now the disc art is exactly the same. So we have Prisoners of the Lake, and if I can just move that, we have disc 2, disc 3, disc 4 and disc 5. Now here we have the little booklet, what it comes with, well I say leaflet. So if we open it up, we have credits, and you may also like the mega and advertisement for Doctor Who magazine and the cast list. So that's basically how the audio is presented. So now let's look at my thoughts on the first story in the box set, The Prisoners of the Lake. Okay, so what are my thoughts on Prisoners of the Lake? Prisoners of the Lake had a tough task of it being the first story to recapture the Pertwee years, and I have to say this story really does capture the Pertwee era out of the two stories, and I think that this story is the best representation of the era. Now, Prisoners of the Lake, I feel it captures the Pertwee era brilliantly, because whether it is your traditional Third Doctor story with it being earthbound and this imminent alien threat lurking in the shadows. Character wise, I'm going to talk about the Third Doctor now. The Third Doctor, I think that this showcases him at his best out of the two stories. Obviously I'll go into more depth about his character in Havoc of Empire later, but this shows his action side. You've got him diving down, saving people, doing Venetian Aikido on the Drashtuns, which is great, and you get some nice moments when the Third Doctor locks horns with the official type of people, which is always great to see. Now, Tim Traylor, I feel that he doesn't do an impression of John Poe. It's more of how John would say the line, so the rhythm of how John Poe would have said the line, which is okay, and he does an okay job. It's nothing spectacular, but it does take a bit of time to warm to that, and it took me a bit of time to get used to Tim Traylor doing it. But my personal preference is Katie Manning. I just think Katie Manning gets that sort of gravelly feel to it, and it still keeps that grand feel of John's voice. But overall, Tim Traylor did an alright job. Obviously, if the Third Doctor adventures do continue, then I can only see him getting better and better. Katie Manning, Joe Grant, I think that she gets some nice little moments within the story. You know, her character does push the plot forward in part 3 and 4, and she gets some nice moments with Caroline Seymour's character, which is always nice to see. Now, Mike Yates, he gets quite a bit of stuff to do, but that's towards the end of his story. I mean, he gets this nice little prologue at the beginning, and then he's sort of pushed aside, you know, for a couple of episodes, and has the odd line here and there. But he starts to come into play when it comes to part 4, when he starts to get some action moments and helping the Doctor, which is always nice. And I feel that Mike gets a bit more character progression within these two stories, and it's nice to see that Mike can have more character added to him. Now, Caroline Seymour's character, I can't remember her name, Frida, I think, Professor Frida. She does a good job, and she really does balance out Unit, which is always nice to see, and her and the Doctor get on well, and her and Joe. So yeah, really good. Now John Banks, this story shows how versatile of an actor he is, playing all these different characters, and my personal favourite is the Drashton Chief, this sort of wolf creature. Next person is Rob Stevens, again, does some very good acting with the numerous characters he plays. Negatives, I think you know what I'm going to say about this, is the narration. Now, I don't mind the narration, I think that it adds detail to the story and it helps you imagine it. But my main criticism about this is you would expect Tim Treloar to do the narration in the third Doctor voice. Sadly, that's not the case. Tim Treloar just slips out and does his normal voice, and I think that breaks the illusion down that he is the third Doctor. Obviously, it says on the back of the narrator, but I feel it would have worked better if we had, him doing the third Doctor voice, just so it doesn't break the illusion throughout the story. Now the foe in this, the Drashtons, I think that they're a great foe, but I think they could have been introduced a bit earlier. But you do feel that there is a sense of threat if they do get onto the surface and havoc will break loose, and I would have liked to have seen the Drashtons get out onto the surface, and I think that would be really good. So my overall thoughts on Prisoners of the Lake: it's a fantastic story. It's traditional to the third Doctor of it being earthbound, and it has some nice little safe science fiction elements, which is just fantastic. The guest cast are brilliant, and Justin Richards really knows how to write for the three main characters. Overall, it's just fantastic and is a superb character piece. Despite those two little niggles I have to say it's still a fantastic story, and I'm going to give my overall rating at the end when I rate the box set. So for now, Prisoners of the Lake, fantastic story, very traditional, with some nice sci-fi elements. So there we are. Okay, Havoc of Empire reminds me of Frontier in Space and the Curse of Paladin to a certain extent, with sabotage and political scandal. And I think that this is a cracking whodunit story. And this story has a great atmosphere, with being tense with these two races trying to come to peace with each other. But that doesn't mean that the story doesn't have a funny side to it, with the Doctor's dress sense being perfect for the sort of surroundings in this story. Now, talking of the third Doctor, Tim Treloar gives us this diplomatic side of Pertwee, what we saw, in Frontier and, the Silurians and the Sea Devils, so we get to see that diplomatic side to him, and him trying to find, the third way, to solve the situation. Now, Katie Manning, I didn't really talk much about her in the Prisoners of the Lake. Now, I have to say this is where, Jo comes to the forefront, with Jo just shines throughout this story with her impersonating Alex Filton, who is a security person, and you think that's a bit of an odd role for Jo to, be in, sorting security out. And, that has some funny moments in itself. And it reminds me why Jo is my favourite companion, with her seeing, when she's not with the Doctor and Mike, her bold and quite confident side, but when she's with the Doctor, she still needs that sort of, she shows her vulnerable side, that we get to see, but she still needs reassurance from the Doctor and Mike, that everything's going to be alright, which is really heartwarming, and I think that Katie Manning does a superb job. And on to Mike. Mike gets a little bit to do, but he's not really in the forefront, he's more in the background of this story, really. And the guest cast, they're good. It's quite a big sort of guest cast, really, of characters. But there is one character what I really don't like, and she just grates on me, is this sort of wedding arranger, person who organises. I can't remember her character name, but she just annoys me. So, what are my overall thoughts on this? I think that this is a fantastic suspenseful story with some brilliant cliffhangers. I mean, it's just brilliant. And we get to see an alien race, what was referenced in Spearhead from Space, make an appearance. So if you know what I mean by that, then you probably have worked that out. And if you like, Frontier in Space, the Curse of Paladin, then you're definitely going to enjoy this story, because it's very much in the same vein as that. And if you're a fan of Jo, definitely get it, because Jo shines throughout this story. So now, let's go to my overall thoughts on the third Doctor Adventures. So, my overall thoughts on this box set: it's a dream come true for a third Doctor fan.
having the third Doctor back on Big Finish, oh, it's just fantastic, and it's just great to have the reunion of the unit family, as it were. You know, the music really does recapture the 70s feel, and it is a true credit to Dudley Simpson. Jay Robertson did a fantastic job. The stories are fantastic, and each story captures a different side of the Third Doctor era. So obviously Prisoner of the Lake would capture the action side in the Earthbound style of story. So there we are. And then Havoc of Empire would, you know, recap, sort of do the sort of political scandal sort of stories, which is just fantastic. So, you know, if you aren't a fan of one story, you're going to be a fan of another, because it has, you know, all the different elements what we all love from the John Pertwee era. So it's just fantastic. Katie Manning, Richard Franklin, and all the guest cast are just superb. As I said, the music is brilliant, and you know, it has this sort of season 9, season 10 feel. So if you're a fan of those seasons, definitely worth checking out. So overall, it gets a big thumbs up for me, and I really hope that Big Finish do continue the Third Doctor adventures, because it seems a shame, you know, recasting the Third Doctor and only doing the one box set. So I really do hope that this is a sign of more Third Doctor, and of course I'm up for that. So overall rating for the stories is, for Prisoners of the Lake, I'm going to say 8.5, because I can't decide whether it is an 8 or a 9, so for now I'm going to put it in the middle. And for Havoc of Empire, it's a bit slow to start off with, but it does start to get going, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Fantastic stories. My overall rating for the box set is going to be a well-deserved 9 out of 10. Definitely worth checking out. If you're a fan of the Third Doctor, just pick it up. It's the Third Doctor, it's going to be good, and it's Big Finish. So overall, definitely worth checking out. Join me in my next review, which will be of the Colin Baker story, Crisscross, the introduction to Constance Clark. So thank you very much for watching this review, and I'll see you next time.